Okay, this is Peter Rogers, MD. We're going to be talking about the quotes of Victor Davis Hanson. We're doing my quote book, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes in alphabetical order. We're on Victor Davis Hanson. He's a brilliant professor. He's written a whole bunch of books. He's a classicist, he's fluent in ancient Greek, and he's got his best book on that sort of topic would be Who Killed Homer. He's got a lot of other good books. He's got lots of YouTube videos as well. Okay, we're going to start going through some of his quotes here. Okay, here we go. Victor Davis Hanson says, most Greek literature was in fact the product of an urban male elite, of the aristocrats, especially in Athens. Okay, Greek wisdom was not Mediterranean. It was anti-Mediterranean. Hellenic culture was not just different from, but entirely antithetical to any other civilization of its time. We've talked about this in previous lectures. The ancient Greeks sort of brought freedom to mankind on a large scale. Before that, all these other governments are all, these tyrannical, brutal dictators, just kick everybody's butt if they don't obey and conform. Greeks made free speech the norm, in Athens in particular. Institution and ideas deriving from a Hellenic core of values have shaped the modern West and must therefore be examined if we are to understand and manage and correct our own lives. Hellenic culture first gave us rational scientific inquiry, often organized into proto-universities and published and read through uncensored media, mostly immune from political and religious coercion. Freedom of speech and permissible dispute of religious norms were also Greek ideas. Yes, freedom of speech comes from the ancient Greeks. That's an important point. That's foundational to Western civilization. They made it possible for the unbeliever to keep his head on his neck. To ignore or destroy the classics of ancient Greece and Rome is to commit cultural suicide. Yeah, it was about 120 years ago, around then. The billionaire perverts of the world at that time had realized in order to destroy Western civilization, they have to destroy the public school system, and they have to teach that that it's a waste of time to learn about the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, and to get rid of all this Christianity, all this noble masculinity, get rid of all this moral righteousness, get rid of the Bible, because all of that stuff builds freedom, it builds confidence. They also want to get rid of the Christian heterosexual family, all of this stuff to weaken, feminize, and then be able to destroy the country. Okay, Victor Davis Hanson continues. The Greeks assumed that culture separates us from our natural savage selves, and that no culture did that better than the world of their own city-state. Pride in one's culture was not chauvinism, but simply a logical and necessary appreciation for a system that required sacrifice and responsibility from the individual citizen. Okay, that's been known, and Closing of the American Mind by Bloom said the same thing. It's normal. Every single culture since the beginning of the time thinks its own is the best, and it takes pride in its own culture, because you have to believe in your own culture and take pride in it, or you're not going to protect it and defend it and maintain it. It just has to be that way. Western culture was unique in at least considering the opinions and perspectives of the other cultures. That's a unique thing. Nobody wants to go to these other cultures, and these other cultures, they don't want you there. Japan doesn't want you there, and it's the same with other cultures. They don't want you there. It's their country. Okay, let's continue. Also, he said, the Western way gave man a material bounty and personal freedom undreamed of by other cultures. Those assumptions in Sophocles' Antigone, they reflect basic Greek approaches to human experience, and they reflect the origin of Western culture. Yeah, Antigone said to the king, King Creon, who tried to prevent her from burying her brother Polynices and just leave him to the dogs, she said, no, I will bury him. There are laws above you, Mr. King, that are universal to mankind. They're the laws of the gods, and they supersede what you say. Okay. Okay, that's a magnificent play, Antigone. And Victor Davis Hanson says, these principles, free speech and moral foundations, they cannot be dismissed as simplistic moral platitudes. They are not merely different from other cultures. Rather, they illustrate the reasons why the West is what it is, what we are today. Yeah, they're why Western culture is the best. A new crop of social constructionists either trashed the classical world for not being multicultural, which is dishonest. No civilization's ever been multicultural. Do you think the ancient Greeks thought other cultures were as good or better than them? No way. People always are going to say their culture's right to defend it, protect it, and maintain it. Or other social constructionists, revisionists, will try to reinvent the Greeks and Roman and pretend that they were multicultural, which is also a lie. To argue, as the evidence overwhelmingly suggests, that Greek wisdom ultimately owes little of its core to the Mediterranean cultures now earns scholars the nastiest of labels. Yeah, they don't like to admit how great the Greeks are, but it's easy, it's obvious. Just study for yourself. Study Greek mythology, study the great Greek playwrights, Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles. You'll see their plays are extraordinary, and Aristophanes, okay? Study the work of Plato and Aristotle, okay? You'll see it's incredible. It sells itself. When you read it, you'll see this is magnificent. There's nothing like this. First, by and large, the sins of the Greeks, which included slavery, sexism, economic exploitation, ethnic chauvinism, are largely the sins of mankind common to all cultures. Slavery's been around in all cultures since the beginning of recorded time. It's Christianity that's gotten rid of it. And the desire to get rid of Christianity is a desire to bring slavery back. And that's what's happening in the modern world right now. That's why Western Christendom is being destroyed. Okay. The others in the Greek world, foreigners, slaves, and women, were also others in other societies of all time, and they continue to be marginalized in most non-Western cultures today. The most important legacy of the Greeks and Romans is the uniquely Western urge to pick apart everything, every institution, traditional and individual. Only in this manner do new ideas arise at all, that change of ideas happens at all, and it is only this way that an author is able to find any credibility with the reading or listening audience. Cynicism, skepticism, parody, invective are all Greek and Latin words, a rich vocabulary of public and private dissent unequaled in non-Western languages. Yeah, conformity is very strong in human nature, it's very strong in non-Western cultures, but to be great, you have to be able to talk and work towards the truth and towards improvement. Victor Davis Hanson says, most ancient Greek women were pregnant or nursing pretty much from menarche to menopause. Yeah, before 1950 or so, before birth control, women would have about 10 kids on average, nurse each one, 2, 3, 4 years, and then get pregnant again. And that was their life, taking care of babies. They're great at it, okay? But that's why they're not really much a part of history, because they weren't involved that much in literature, culture, and history. They were busy taking care of kids and having babies. Okay, he continues. If anyone is to teach about Greece and Rome, then at least a few in America must be left who know the Greek language. Not just the literature and translation, nor merely the history of the Mediterranean, but the problem is that Greek is fairly difficult. Greek begins and ends ultimately with the mastery of the language of ancient Athens. Yeah, we got to keep these classicists. You know who's a good classicist is Alex Petkas. His YouTube channel is called Cost to Glory. He's more interested in the Romans, though. Truth only emerges through dissent and open criticism. Yep, so you got to allow it. Okay, anything that doesn't allow discussion usually is bogus and it's enforced by force. Okay, you'll notice that. Modern universities have undergraduates that are hordes of bored idiots. Multiculturalism is a good reminder that when standards are relative, there are no standards at all. Yeah, all this getting rid of Christianity and switching to atheistic Darwinism has turned our universities into nonsense factories. They're an absolute joke. Victor Davis Hanson continues, California is a warning of what not to do. Rarely has a single generation inherited so much natural wealth and bounty from the investment and hard work of those more noble, now resting in our cemeteries, and squandered the gift within one generation. Yeah, California is the biggest crap hole disaster. I went to Stanford back in the 1980s. California was so rich, some of the junior colleges were free. I knew stories about people going to college for free, okay? Money was big. My father was a doctor. He literally made the equivalent of about 4 times what I make now, okay? Doctors' financial status has dropped dramatically from what it was in the past. My dad, he never thought twice about, like, for example, one of my cousins, their father died. So he had 3 daughters. My dad just paid for their college educations. That was no big deal for him to do. I remember when I was a kid, almost all my friends, their parents were married, and the mother did not work. That was a rare thing, that the mom actually had a job outside the house. The only one of my friends whose mom had a job was a lady who was divorced, and that, impoverished their family, so she had to work. And that was the house people would go to have a party, because there's no parent in the house. He continues. Yeah, so California used to be the richest state by far. Like, it was incredibly rich. And now it's like one of the poorest third world crap holes, all these homeless people, all this crime, all this BS. It's because the left has destroyed it. They destroy everything they touch. Atheistic Darwinism destroys everything. Destroyed the Boy Scouts, destroyed the public grade schools, destroyed the public high schools, destroyed the public universities, destroyed California and other places. It destroys everything it touches. It's destroying healthcare. Okay, he continues, Victor Davis Hanson. Stalin and Mao killed over 80 million, and they did not make any omelets despite the broken eggs. That's like the old Robespierre quote. In order to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, but that's BS. They just use that as an excuse for tyrannical, cruel, brutal behavior. They don't ever make anything good. Nothing good comes from these lefty countries. Soviet Russia. What has ever come good from that place? Just, it's just a disaster. The old joke was, Ann Coulter said, Soviet leadership led to 70 years in a row of bad weather, because they rip off all the farmers, so the farmers stop working. They just make as little as possible, because otherwise it would just be taken away from them anyway, so they lose all their motivation to work, and tons of men are alcoholics. I know lots of people that grew up under Soviet communism, and it's like you hear it, everyone is an alcoholic, everyone's an alcoholic. All the men become not all the men, but tons of men are alcoholics because they're not allowed to do anything. Okay, Victor Davis Hanson. It is never wrong to be on the side of freedom. Never. That's a good quote. Remember that. Freedom is a precious thing. We need to preserve it. Okay. Continuing with Victor Davis Hanson quotes. A true scholar is one who investigates the truth, regardless of the personal biases or popular opinion. The pursuit of excellence should be a guiding principle in all aspects of life. The preservation of culture and heritage is crucial for maintaining a sense of identity and fostering social cohesion. Like, what does religion mean? It means relegare. Legare is to ligate, to tie together. It's what ties the people together. You can't have a country without a religion. And the current religion is atheistic Darwinism, and it's evil. It's satanic, okay? So we need to get the country as much as possible back to Christian ethics, or the country's going to become slavery, because that's what social Darwinism, that's what atheistic Darwinism wants, is slavery. Okay. Continuing with Victor Davis Hanson. Civilizations rise and fall based on their ability to adapt to changing circumstances and challenges. Okay, that's a lot like Toynbee's history about, the challenge of civilizations. They have to respond to them, all their problems. A society is only as strong as its moral and ethical foundation. Yeah. And the founding fathers had said, too, the Constitution was designed for a Christian nation. And if you don't have a Christian ethics, you're not going to be able to hold things up, because the Christian ethics get people to do the right thing when nobody's looking, and that's what you need. Freedom is not guaranteed, but must be defended and preserved through constant vigilance and sacrifice. Yeah, the young people have to be educated on the greatness of Western civilization and Christianity and the old-time USA. Okay, he continues. The middle class is shrinking. The American middle class has been losing economic ground for nearly half a century, burdened by mounting household debt, static wages, and record student loan burdens. Yeah, nowadays, almost all mothers work. Okay, I know lots of married doctors and married to other doctors, and typically both of them work. A lot of times the woman goes part-time, but they're both still working and feel that they need to. Okay, this leads to a society bifurcated into modern masters and peasants. Yeah, we used to have a huge middle class. Now we got the rich and we got the poor, and there's not that much of a middle class. Okay. This leads to society. Okay. Shared identity is essential. A common culture and a collective civic sense of self are crucial for sustaining a unified nation. In my experience, it felt like the United States was pretty much well unified up until about 1990. It started being pulled apart by the left. But before then, we were pretty unified. Like the 1980s were a great decade, okay? And I got family members like in every different ethnic group you could imagine, okay? We all felt the same. We were all Americans, okay? We didn't, like Teddy Roosevelt had said, none of this hyphenated Americans. The word I grew up on was a melting pot. You come to America, you become American. My mother didn't consider herself a Puerto Rican. She considered herself an American. My father was happy and proud to be an American. He loved Ireland. My mom loved Puerto Rico, but they were Americans, okay? And that's how it was, and we felt like we were all Americans. We didn't have this, well, you're an African American or you're a Pacific Islander American or whatever. We were just Americans. Okay. He continues, Victor Davis Hanson. The rise of tribalism, where ethnic, racial, and tribal identities take precedence over national identity, fragments the idea of an American citizen, and it fuels social division. Okay, so anyways, Victor Davis Hanson, he's a real smart guy with a lot of knowledge, especially ancient Greek and Roman history, and lots of videos you can watch on YouTube and elsewhere if you want. Hope you found that helpful.